Going live.
We're live.
Great. All right, cool. Let's see. So thank you everyone for joining this week's OpenJS Foundation Cross-Project Council meeting. Today is the 17th of July, and we have a light agenda here. But let's perhaps get started with any announcements. Does anybody have anything that they want to share?
Oh, you know I do. So just want to encourage anybody who's interested in getting involved in planning the next Collaborator Summit to check out the Summit repository that's still under the Nodejs organization, but we're starting to get organized for that event, which will of course be the 2 days following Node plus JS Interactive later in December. So that is that's one announcement. And dang, the other one, I had another one and I totally just lost it. I'll think of it in a minute though.
Yeah, take a moment to think about it. I'll just say really quickly, for anyone who hasn't attended, the Collab Summit is fantastic, and it's even better now, I think, that it's opened up to OpenJS, folks, but not only the OpenJS stuff, but the TC39 folks were at the last Collab Summit in Berlin, and I thought it was really great. So I encourage people to get involved and to come and participate.
I second that, and I did think the second thing. That was perfect. The second thing is that Rachel and Tracy have been working on a number of different marketing ideas, and one of them is doing a series of AMAs, and we just want to make sure that any person affiliated with a project who might want to do an AMA type format thing to talk about stuff going on in the project or how to get involved, that kind of stuff for the OpenJS social media channels, definitely reach out to Rachel or Tracy or myself so we can start planning some stuff for you. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Jory. Any other announcements or things that people want to share before we get into the agenda?
Just as a note for Jory, I'm driving, so can't do it right away. But I'm interested in helping with the summit. In case I don't actively do anything, please prod me about that later. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, maybe we should just plan on mentioning it each week for a few weeks to prod folks and get anyone else who may miss this meeting, alert them next time. Thanks, Emily. Thank you, Jory. Anyone else? Great. So the agenda is issue number 257 in the Cross-Project Council repo. And the first agenda item is who can be an observer, issue number 234. This is something that's been around for 23 days. We talked about it some. There was a PR open. Let's see. So the PR is issue 250 or pull request 255 that Jory had opened. Originally, it was in the governance or the charter, I mean, and we moved it to the Readme. And I see that Miles just made a comment 6 minutes ago that he was under the impression that we wanted to go even more liberal with this. So do you want to comment on this, Miles? We'll have a little chat.
Yeah, I was under the impression from the prior conversations that we weren't limiting observers just to people who contributed to OpenJS projects. So I offered a suggestion to make the language a little more liberal. If that's not the direction we want to go, I'm kind of on the fence about it myself, but just wanted to get clarification on that.
Yeah, I was under that impression as well, and I thought that it even said it somewhere. I'm trying to look through the README and other areas to see.
Yeah, that certainly matches my understanding as well, that it wasn't necessarily limited to that.
Yeah. Okay. So in
Switch to that too, though, so it totally makes sense where this this language came from, which was kind of the original discussion.
yeah, in the charter, it doesn't say anything about that. It's just the charter is very simple. It says observers are free to attend meetings and participate in the work of the CPC as well as the consensus seeking process.
So with that in mind, does anyone object to maybe landing that suggestion or just tweaking the language a bit and then landing this PR?
I do not object.
No objection. And that language that's in there may have just been a misinterpretation on my part. I'm super excited for everybody to come.
Yep, I'm +1 on your suggestion and then landing the whole thing.
Ruby.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I wanted to add something that I was thinking about when I put a tweet together 10 minutes before the meeting that was kind of encouraging people to get involved. And something that stuck out to me is the term observer seems a little awkward in that we've had recent discussions around wanting, observers, for lack of a better term, to be involved and perhaps not just observe. So I just want to maybe throw that out there for discussion or for thought that maybe the term observer could be a different, better term.
I would decouple that. Sorry, go ahead.
I personally think the term is absolutely fine, especially if we're advising people that, like, hey, you're invited to participate, but not necessarily engage fully. I will say, though, as a heads up, if we do want to change the term observer, that will involve a charter change.
Right. And that's why I was saying we should decouple it from this because of that. Yeah,
I totally agree. And sorry for derailing in any sort of way. It just came to mind. So with that, it sounds like there's no objections to that language tweak and landing that PR. Any objections?
No objections here.
Great. All right. We can call that one done. Thank you, Jory. Thank you, Miles. Moving on. The next issue is in the agenda is issue 199. And before we kind of got things rolling, we briefly talked about this because this has been around for a little while. This is approved charter changes for Nodejs charter. We've discussed it. We landed some language to be clear about it. The TSC charter has been merged. The change has landed. I believe a community committee change is in the works, but this issue is closed. And so unless anyone has anything else to add, we can move on. Great. The next issue is 129. This is my favorite issue. This is review meeting times, and I'm being sarcastic. This has been open since March 25th, when we were still, I believe, the Bootstrap committee, or maybe we just started doing the, gave birth to the Cross-Project Council. And this is something that we've been trying to work through for a while. We have a spreadsheet that is linked to from this issue where people who are involved in this work to whatever degree are sharing the times that work best for them. Last week, I went through those times and took basically the best times that seemed to pair up well. And I even threw in a wild card that was a little different than some of the other ones and was not above the 80 threshold in terms of points in the spreadsheet. And we had a number of people vote on those times. And we have basically 2 sets of time slots that received 7 votes and another 2 that received 6 votes. So in essence, I think another 4 time slots. I'm frankly not sure how to kind of move forward on this. If anyone has any thoughts, I would be happy to hear them.
Just pick one. If they're all equal, then picking one over another one is no worse or no better. I'll go with whatever, Joe, you think is fun.
I think my suggestion would be to go with Tuesday, just to completely avoid the conflict with the no TSC meetings. Because it looks like the Wednesday time that was chosen might conflict on certain days.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah, that seems like that's the biggest recurring conflict, and also it just gives another day for those for whom Wednesday isn't great.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, I'm sorry for circling back, is there a link to or a documentation of the good new times? Was that put in the issue?
The time suggestions that I made?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pasting the link to the comment in the issue.
There you go. Thank you, Michael. So the 1600 time slot got the most votes on both of those 2 days. So I tried to pair times with those time slots, just giving some thought, some background context into why I chose these times. All of these ones are the above 80 points time slots, except for the one kind of wild card there. So, I mean, we could just move it to Tuesday and choose the 1600 and 2100 times. Is that what's being suggested in terms of the moving it to Tuesday?
I thought it was 1600, 1800, right?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Thank you.
Yep.
So the only thing I will say is it looks like 1600 conflicts with the Node.js build working group meeting, as a heads up. Not saying we shouldn't, but just so we know what the conflicts are.
Okay. Is that every other week?
That is every other week.
Okay. So maybe...
I'm not sure.
It's every third.
Every third week, and it does alternate well.
Okay. So once every 6 weeks or something, it would conflict maybe? I'll check my math on that.
Yeah, in theory, it should be once every 6 weeks, or actually, it's.
I think we should actually consider the number of conflicts we have with other, in particular Node meeting times, as an indicator that these times are in general good for people.
Yeah.
There is that too, yeah.
Great. So let's just let's call it that. Let's for now let's choose 1600 and 1800 on Tuesday, and we can check back on this in a few months if need be, or if somebody wants to add a third time slot for a certain area that's being neglected or what have you. We can kind of be open to that in the future. Wow, I know that's kind of exciting. All right, great. So moving on, unless anyone wants to talk about meeting times any further, please don't. Well, I guess before we get into the post-bootstrap project board, Michael Dawson had mentioned issue 124, update or move the JSF CLA bot for the new foundation. This has been open for a while. Does anyone have any context on this or want to share anything?
Yeah, I just added that because somebody had pinged the issue again saying it was a problem and thought maybe we should figure out next step, prioritize, whatever.
Okay.
So I'll weigh in here, and I'm sure Chris and Brian can as well. So the bot that we have currently is obviously from the JS Foundation, and we've been talking with and asking projects for input on it as to whether they want to keep using a CLA, whether they want to switch over to a DCO, or whether they want to use nothing at all. That's actually valid. One of the tools that we're looking at is actually an LF tool, which Brian can probably more to. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so this is we had a discussion last week with the OpenJS Foundation's council, and this was one of the topics that came up, how to handle CLAs and so forth. And it's maybe worth doing a deeper dive on here once we've had a little bit of time to get some guidance together. The main thing that I would leave right now on this topic is that it's something that's actively under discussion. We do have some tooling that's available to make this potentially a little bit easier, and we should have some guidance for the projects on what how we can support them depending upon how they want to proceed.
Yeah, maybe.
I realize that's kind of vague, but we are, things are still kind of in flight, and we're still figuring out exactly how to how to provide the guidance.
Right. So maybe adding something into the issue, just saying we're working on it, and any references to the discussion that's being worked on would probably be a good answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly people can contact me. I can put them in touch with the right people. It's not as hairy and scary as it seems like it might be. That was the takeaway, is that this may actually be easier and less scary than it looks.
Would it even...
Sorry, what exactly is less scary and hairy?
When we start talking about CLAs and are they needed and how do you implement them properly and things like that. So that could be a hairy and scary question.
And this is the question that they're trying to answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a question on this, is there maybe like a meta thing that we should be taking up with the legal subcommittee about what the recommendation is regarding like the DCO and CLAs in general, and having a policy around that before we even start kind of digging into technical solutions?
Yeah. So here's the way that I see this playing out. We do have a legal mailing list now for member council, which we had with both foundations previously, but I've gone through and I've refreshed that. So essentially the order of operations here is I'm working with the outside counsel right now to figure out, what a draft policy would look like. That draft policy would then be reviewed by the various attorneys who are involved in the foundation. And then once we've got everybody essentially on the same page and comfortable with the language, at that point, then it can be put out and documented for projects to be able to see. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does to me. Just whatever we can put in an issue or whatever, saying here's what we're doing and here's the next step, would give visibility. So
I can do that. That's no problem. I would want to avoid putting something there before the various people, the various attorneys have taken a look at this. And
at this point, it doesn't have to be the text, but just like, here's the thing, here's what we're working through. And, then you can keep that updated so that when people are wondering if it's progressing, they can look there and say, yeah, okay, it's moved 2 steps forward, therefore I'll wait a little longer.
Yep.
Great.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Brian. So excellent. So that's issue 124, and Michael had tagged it to the agenda, but it is also in our post-bootstrap housekeeping project board here, which I will throw the link into the chat. So that is the going over this project board is the last agenda item here. And we were able to close out a number of issues last week, which was exciting. Looking at the project board, the only in progress, and I don't know, should I move the JSF CLA bot to in progress if discussions are being had and we're just kind of waiting for guidance?
I think that would be a great idea, and actually a thought that just popped into my head for folks on the call or listening who are interested in helping, improve and make better JS Foundation like infrastructure or OpenJS Foundation infrastructure stuff. There's an infra channel, and you should join it in the Slack, and we can have like more ongoing conversations about moving some of these projects forward, because they're onerous and tricky, and we need lots of people, lots of eyes on it.
And maybe this is a good opportunity to promote the Slack sign up if people who are watching or participating here are unaware of it.
Sure, it is a very long URL. How about we tweet it?
Yeah, Brian, is that something that we can get like a short URL to redirect for, or that's something we can do?
I would assume so.
Okay.
Let's see. So I think actually one of the things I had on my to-do list here was to set up a something on the openjsf.org domain where we could put links to both the channel and the sign-up link. So I can create that page. I had that on my to-do list from 2 weeks ago and I forgot about it.
Maybe we should create an issue in the to-dos here.
Oh,
right.
Great idea. Yeah, let's try that.
Great idea.
So there was like create page with links to Slack channels, sign up.
I'd probably just set it up at openjsf.org/Slack or something like that. It's easy to remember.
Yeah. And then some links on like our Readmes and stuff like that in the CPC. Because I guess, so you're thinking of including like, here's all the different channels and what they're used for?
Yeah. As well as the link to, or the invite link, which I guess it's not really there's no issue with having that open. We're not limiting the number of people in the channels or anything like that. So the more accessible it is, the better.
Yep. Great. All right. So Michael, it sounded like you were creating that issue.
The issue's created and I just moved it into in progress.
Awesome.
Great. Refresh
for things like that, you can assign them directly to me too. I mean, that's.
I also assigned it to you.
All right.
One step ahead.
And maybe we should assign should we assign the CLA bots to you as well, Brian? I don't want to be.
We can do that. Yep. I was just going to respond and self-assign, but that's fine too. I mean, any of these things like this, you're welcome to assign them to me.
Okay. Boom.
Yeah, it's already assigned to me.
Great. Excellent. Should we, do you think that the page with links to Slack, should we go ahead and add the agenda label to that and check back in on it next week? Brian?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, great.
Yeah. I mean, it won't take me very long to do.
Done. All right, great. So the other issue here that is in progress is the travel fund.
That's assigned to me. No progress on it last week, but I'll be working on it this week.
Great. And let me see if you are, I'm going to assign it directly to you in the project.
Cool.
So now that has your name and face on it. Thank you. Great. And just for folks who are new to this issue, Jonah's going to look through the way this is documented and executed from previous years in the Node Foundation and throw together a proposal for having this at the OpenJS level. And we can go from there. So thank you. Does anyone have anything to add on that or want to talk about that in any way? Great. The next item in the to-do column here was added by Miles, I assume a while ago. This is add entry point for projects wanting to join on Readme and review project progression. Jory will help with this one. Is this maybe another good opportunity to kind of dive into the project progression? And I don't know if we should take if we have I don't know if we have like a project progression issue that we could move these under. Jory or Miles, you want to give us some?
So just kind of following up from last week's discussion, I have a couple of meetings this week to help projects start their applications, which is really exciting. So we should be seeing some emails from some maintainers soon about formally starting this process. Super rad. I think this particular issue was raised quite some time ago, where we thought, geez, it would be great for folks who are navigating to this page as potential project members of the foundation to figure out how to start that process. Given that our current progression proposal is at stage 3, right? Or yes, I think it's probably settled enough that we can propose some language for the README for that audience. That's my 2 cents on it, but I would be curious how other folks feel about that.
I definitely agree that it's ready.
I would say the one thing, like I emailed to the board last week. I would like to ensure that the board has had a chance to review and be +1 on it before we make it too discoverable. There is the other PR that's open that improves the documentation. So perhaps what we could do is add it to that PR, because that has all the instructions. So if you go to
Pull request 248, pull request?
165.
Oh, that one.
So this is the one that actually updates the project progression doc to include like the whole process. That includes like everything that's going on. Now we can make a pointer to that in the README, or we could move it to the README, but that's kind of where the actual documentation of the process is currently planned to be living.
Where did you say this was? 155? Is that an issue or?
165, I just dropped the PR into the chat. So basically when the stage 3 proposal lands, it introduces the new file, which is like the form to be filled out, the kind of my brain stopped working, so I'm gonna just move forward. But then that gets paired with this change to the project progression doc, which includes the whole application phase and the incubation process.
Got it.
So we could just add like a link from the README to this, would maybe be the simplest thing. But it could be a lot of like, people having to bop around to find the thing they're looking for. So perhaps we want to move some of this just to the README.
Okay, great.
I think adding, like where you were suggesting adding the update to the README into that PR.
Okay, that makes sense. And for what it's worth, I'm about to go on vacation for the next 2 weeks, so I won't be around. So if anyone wants to just kind of pick that up and move with it, for our 2 board reps from the community, Michael and Chris, if you want to take this on and just kind of make sure that, it's followed up with the board. I think from last week's meeting, we were saying, a week or 2 without comment is like, pretty reasonable. So I think if we get to next week's meeting and there hasn't been anything on the board list, then, it might be good to just land it as stage 3.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of writing a follow-up to that thread right now, Miles. So I'll just let them know that that's kind of how we're going to proceed. So if there's no response within the next week or so, we'll just kind of assume that they're okay with it.
Yeah, great. And if someone could just take the action item of adding the README link, I'm kind of swamped for time right now, but I trust you all to take it over the finish line.
I can do that.
Okay, so I'm going to take that I'm going to convert that thing to a issue, and we can add that, agreed to add to 165, and I'll assign it to you, Jory. Sounds like great.
So can I ask for clarification, perhaps from you, Jory? What is the expectation when someone shows interest in joining the foundation? They'll fill out this form or what have you, application. Is there a subgroup of sorts that will handhold them through the process, or will we discuss it as a larger group once we've kind of got over the initial hurdle? What's the expectation there?
So let's pretend that somebody comes along and they discover the OpenJS Foundation and they don't already know somebody on the CPC that they can reach out to, because in practicality, that's what happens, right?
Yep.
Somebody we know from the community says, hey, I'm interested in this, and they go approach somebody on the CPC, and that's sort of how the ball generally gets rolling. But in the event they don't, we hope that this provides them enough guidance to start to fill out that application and then submit it to the new projects email list, which is the board of directors, the regular and voting CPC members are all on that list. We would love to, at that point, find somebody from the community to be basically a champion, or a support person to help make sure that the application is proceeding, that we're helping the project address any issues or uncover any potential problems or whatever, and that person is making sure that the diligence is being done for the project before we take them into the foundation as an incubating project. So we had for a while a champion as part of this, and we included that in the application, but we decided, I think, that was possibly confusing to new projects, especially projects that may not, understand what we mean by that. And so that's rather something that the CPC should endeavor to appoint for each new project.
I think the question I took out of that was, like, ideally, if you volunteer to be the champion, it'd be nice if there was like a handbook of like, what do you need to stick handle everything through as the champion. So it sounds like, unless we had like something like that from the OpenJS app or from the JS Foundation, maybe we just need to try and create one as we go through the first few projects.
And I think that will be something that we have to kind of create together, especially as we, first off, like dog food, which is such a wonderful way of putting it.
Drink our own champagne.
For our existing projects, and then also as we take in these first few applicants who are totally aware and totally okay with the fact that this is a new process that we're learning as we go. So I think this is some just ambiguity that is natural for a first time process to go through.
So I want to say that that was a great way to ask Michael, like a true Canadian, using the term stick handle, hockey reference.
Yeah.
I'm looking through, and I'm not sure where these were, and forgive me if I'm taking us off on wherever, but I remember Toby raising some questions in a PR that I'm not seeing now, and I'm just kind of generally curious if those were addressed. There were a number of things that he was concerned about a larger project potentially having an issue with. So
we captured Toby's concerns in an open questions section of the proposal README. So those haven't been lost. I can't answer this for Toby, and Toby, I happen to know, is on vacation until sometime next week. So I don't think that we've had a lot more progress on our dialogue with him to ensure that the changes we've made have addressed the concerns that he raised.
Okay, yeah, that kind of jogged my memory there. My only concern was that I remember we're worried about this going to stage 3 where it's board approval when we had some outstanding questions, but we're comfortable moving forward and addressing those questions as we dog food, for lack of a better term, this project progression process. That correct? Am I correct there?
That's correct. I mean, from the conversation that I had with Toby, this has been at the end of June, they didn't feel like anything, that they were raising should block this from advancing through our process. It was just more, they felt that these were more detailed questions that would be beneficial to have figured out before proceeding with any application from a very large project. So more of the that kind of thing.
Okay. And is there any progress on any projects that are already a part of the foundation helping dog food this process?
So Architect was the group that volunteered, and Chris and I are planning to meet tomorrow to start that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and Nodejs has updated the TSC charter, and I know there's an issue on the ComCom to do the same there. So that's the first kind of steps, and I do have sort of on my to-do list somewhere to update some of the code of conducts. So I don't think we've officially really launched a major program. We're sort of slowly starting to look at some of those things.
Okay, yeah, and then maybe we can evaluate how close or far we are, the Node project is from being.
Yeah, that would probably make sense to just go through the checklist and say which one of these are open versus already covered.
Great. And I'll just ask one more question, perhaps of you, Jory. You very much seem to be kind of spearheading this project. I know Miles has been working on it too, but I mean, I guess I'll offer. I'm here to help work through the process if you need any more hands involved.
Definitely, I think this is something that any CPC, especially the voting members and regular members too, should feel comfortable with, especially because we know that the new projects and new participants are going to come to us from our network of people, and so this should be something that everybody feels is reasonable, natural, not too much overhead, so that we can help our peers on board.
Great. Do we have anything more we want to discuss on project progression? Trying to look at the board here to see if there's anything related in the to-do column related to project progression. I mean, just the next item in the to-do column is ask projects to start updating references to docs and CPC repo. I mean, in a way that's kind of related to internal projects being in line. Does anybody have any updates or context on this to-do item here? Ask projects to start updating references to docs and CPC repo, example, COC, etc.
We might want to push on it a little bit more once the process actually hits stage 3.
Okay.
I'd be once that lands, then it's okay, we're ready to go. How do we open an issue in each of the projects saying here's a checklist, or there's a few volunteers at least have references to issues where we can see that the first projects are starting to go through that.
Should we go ahead?
I was going to say, I raised shortly before this meeting, what was it, 258, I think? Yeah, 258, which is kind of related, but I just want to call out explicitly guidance on updating legal statements in the projects, like license and copyright statements. It's good to make sure the readmes point to the right URLs, but I think getting the licenses and copyrights updated is going to be important. And Brian has self-assigned and has already given a little update in that issue, but I think that falls under this same to-do item.
Great.
Okay.
I have a suggestion. It may be out of order, but if we're talking about tracking the progression of all the projects that are in the application process, should we create another board, like another project board, and then we can sort of have a column for each of our stages, and then be able to track them all that way?
That's a good idea. I mean, my first thought around tracking this was to have one singular issue that has the list of projects and perhaps guidance on what needs to be updated, and then that checklist can reference issues in individual projects to make the changes.
Okay.
But
I mean, that's just a thought that I had.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we started out with what's in our boards now. So it might actually make sense to just start with a board. It is a little easier to update and drag across, and since we're already using the boards in a few places.
I like that idea. It seems like we could pretty easily take a look and drill down and see where projects are that way. I like that.
Yeah. So, and so would we have an issue for each project, and should we have some sort of issue template or at least a form of sorts for each project and the things that they need, or how should we move forward on this?
I would suggest an issue per project rather than trying to, it's either you cut it by concern with a checklist for each project in that one issue, or it's per project.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah, I forget in the project progression, did we already ask for a PR at some point? I know we start with an email so it can be done without disclosure, but then do we accept? Because if we already asked for a PR at some point, it would be a natural thing to just add that PR into the board, right?
I don't believe that we asked for a PR actually, Michael.
Okay.
So I guess my question is, to get this rolling, should we just have an issue to get this rolling, to create a board and create?
Yep. I think that makes sense.
I agree, and I was gonna offer / suggest. So as Chris and I are going to be meeting tomorrow to do this for architect, I think I'm going to volunteer Chris and I for work here. We could take a stab at creating that template as that issue template for all the projects, and publish and share that and get everybody's thoughts on it, just to start more recruiting.
That would be great. That would be great. So can Jory or Michael, you're really good at kicking out issues really quickly. Somebody create something.
So I just said create issue template and new board to track applications to join the foundation.
Great.
And I'll assign it to Jory and Chris.
Yeah, sorry, Chris Borchers.
It's all good.
All right. All right. So we have 10 minutes left. I can continue going through the to-do list here in the project board. Review foundation infrastructure and rethink how we manage it. This was created by Miles, I assume, some time ago as well. Miles, are you still on the call? Do you want to talk about your thoughts on this one, and we can kind of expand from there?
I don't think there's much to do on it today, to be honest. I think there's some other things that are more pressing, but I think a lot of it is about going through what resources different groups need, figuring out if there's a way for us to collaborate together, like, whether this is CI infrastructure or even stuff like Zoom. But I don't think it's, the best use of the time right now.
Yep, makes sense. Thank you. Next item here in the to-do column is project-directed funding. This is an issue that Jory opened. This was January 28th. This is something we've kind of talked about over the time that we did the Bootstrap work. And do we have any updates or context or thoughts we want to share on this?
So I'll just share some context about this, the creation of this. So this was this issue was created to keep track of the need and the concern to make sure that we're addressing supporting projects who want to use tools like Open Collective or Patreon or those kinds of fundraising platforms to self-direct funds for whatever activity they may want to do. We don't really have a great set of guidelines or principles or anything like that projects can look to understand how and when and where they can be using these things, especially since we need to make it clear that the foundation isn't accepting these funds on behalf of the project. That's something that can confuse potential donors. So that's one set of kind of things we want to be able to address for projects and for potential projects. I think this is something that really needs to come from the board in terms of strategy. So that's the purpose, just to capture the concern and make sure that we eventually get to a point where we're developing these tools.
Right. From my understanding, it was also, the other aspect was some companies had expressed that they might want to direct funding to a particular project. So, this was to also cover some sort of mechanism, to consider some sort of mechanism where, you could join the foundation, but then also direct some portion of your funding or some additional funding to a particular project.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And I talked actually not all that long ago with Brian and Mike Dolan about this because it was an interest from another potential project. We currently can do that if a company wanted to come in and donate some money so that a project could have like a project specific event. That is something they can do, but it's just not very clear that that's something that is possible and exactly how that works. So that's part of the documentation, I think.
Yeah, I think documenting what could already happen would be great.
Yeah, because that definitely seems like two different issues. And does someone know? And I want to double back on what Chris is asking in the chat about the reviewing times, but I just want to ask. Is it against foundation guidelines in any sort of way to accept like Patreon or any other contributions?
So I think this is probably a bigger topic than just a couple of minutes can provide. Right now, we do have some projects that use, for example, Open Collective, and what they have on their project pages on Open Collective is a disclaimer that says that those funds are not being the foundation isn't taking those funds, where you have no oversight of those funds, that it is an entirely community-driven effort on the part of the individuals who are listed on that page. And so we have that because it's a way to help protect the foundation from the liability if, for example, a project happened to be mismanaging those funds or doing something that could jeopardize our nonprofit status. Like, we want to make sure that there's that firewall in place and that people are clear that they're making the donations to the individuals and not to the OpenJS Foundation.
All right, so yeah, I think I would imagine, Chris, if you can take this up to the board and have this discussion at that level too, that would be great. And we can come back to this, both the project directed funding as well as open collective and things like that. We can document what the guidance is there.
So I can confirm that the board is already aware of this and is already working on it. And it's something that's, it's under active discussion.
Great.
They definitely, though, the board definitely recognizes that there are projects asking for clarification. And, I think certainly everybody wants to act in good faith on all of this stuff. And big part of that is just understanding what the guidelines are. And they're very aware of that.
Yeah.
Does that apply to both the Patreon type thing and the, somebody coming and saying, I want to, through the foundation, direct some funds?
So, yes, essentially, because I think they're basically two different use cases of what would be fundamentally very similar on the back end. So it's, so I think both of those would be under consideration.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
All right, great. So we'll come back to that. We have 3 minutes left, and Chris asked to talk about reviewing times some more. So what do you got, Chris? No
I just wanted to make sure my understanding. So my understanding was we were moving meetings to 2 alternating times on Tuesdays, but what was recorded in the minutes is we were alternating between Tuesday and Wednesday.
Thanks for clarifying. I was under the impression that we were just moving to Tuesday and alternating between 1600 and 1800 on Tuesday.
Right, that was my understanding as well. So
okay,
it was recorded properly.
That's probably my error. That is my error because I'm the one mostly taking notes. So.
Well, thank you, Jory, for taking.
And which alternates do we start with?
Okay, yeah. I mean, I guess we're official. So should we? Since we've been meeting at 1600, should we start with 1800 next week?
Sounds good.
I'm on vacation, so it's good for me.
All right, great. So that's settled. And thanks for clarifying, Chris. No tomatoes need to be thrown. We only have a couple minutes left. Do we want to talk about anything for a couple of minutes? I mean, the last 2 items are document/define initial process for handling reports to report at openjsf.org.
That's more than a 2-minute.
Yeah. So,
right.
I mean,
it is assigned to Manil. So if Manil's is he here? I can't remember.
I think he was. Yeah, he's here.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add on that front.
Hi on, folks. Am I unmuted?
Yep, you are unmuted.
Oh, super. So are we talking about the moderation guidelines?
One issue,
sorry.
Which I think essentially would be, moderation guidelines. Need to document process for reporting/moderating. So yes.
Yeah, there is a document on that issue. Sorry, I don't have my machine. I'm actually tuning in from my phone. There is a document on the issue which I drafted, and it's ready for comments. I'm not sure if y'all can see it. It's a Google Doc. The share should be open.
Oh, I see it. That's from May 6th.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
I don't know if we get more comments if you PR it in somewhere.
Okay, so is the next action then to PR it somewhere where folks can comment on it through GitHub?
I think that would be good unless we have some sort of hesitation for it being there. And is this does this belong in some sort of admin repo as well, or will this be in the CPC repo?
I think it's the process is owned by the CPC, so that's probably where it makes sense, right?
Okay.
Concurred.
Okay. All right. Great. Yeah. If you don't mind taking this to the next step, Manil, we can work on it further that way.
Yeah, happy to. I'll just PR the contents of the document there and wait for comments.
And could someone comment in that issue that that's what we agreed on?
I can do that.
Great. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
All right, great. So we are a minute over. So with that, we will wrap another great, successful cross-project council meeting. Thank you, everyone, for being involved. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
Okay,
Super. Thanks, folks.
Cheers.